Welcome to Tales from the Waystone, a King Killer Chronicle reread podcast.
We are your hosts, Will and Phoenix. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Tales from the Waystone, Season 2, Episode 70, Severance Packages, where we will be looking at Chapter 140 of The Wise Man's Fear through the lens of letting go.
Mental note from last time, I wrote down Severance from Severin, because I think that's what you planned on naming it, but I think Severance Packages is fine. Anyway, before we get too far into it, let's go ahead and do all of our standard explanation, disclaimers, all that stuff. Each week, we will be examining a section of the Wise Man's Fear through a chosen lens and figuring out what we can take from the text and apply to our real lives. We will also take some time to focus on our friendliness of the week, and then we will share a recommended thing of the week and finally wrap things up with 7 words from the book and 7 words from our own lives. Before we begin, let's get some disclaimers out of the way. First of all, we are in no way affiliated with Patrick Rothfuss or his publisher Dogbook. Second of all, we are going to assume that you don't give a
Shirt?
about spoilers. Also, a word to our community, please be kind to yourselves, one another, and the creators of the world that we love exploring. And now, as a follow-up to a rather long and drawn-out episode that took me a long time to edit, we present to you an episode of one chapter.
Phew.
A pretty eventful chapter, but one chapter. Also, it smacks a little bit of the book's getting really long and I need to get to the climax somehow.
Yeah. This is just Chapter 140, Just Rewards. So we begin with Kvothe waking up the next day after his fateful meeting with Alvaron and Maeluen, and it starts with a messenger with a series of letters from Alvaron. That first letter is one of those classic "I regret to inform you" letters that they're never good news.
This is officially the get out letter.
This is "you're fired."
I regret to inform you that while I like you, my wife hates you. Please leave.
Yeah, this isn't gonna work.
So now Kvothe is left with some useful items and some disappointment.
Yeah, Alvaron states that while he believes that Kvothe acted in the interests of the greater good,
The greater good.
he's going to be offering Kvothe the following as basically a severance package. Hey, that's the name of our episode.
And also the name of the town, or city, or whatever.
So he's giving Kvothe a full pardon for the bandits that he killed near Levenshire, a letter of credit letting Kvothe draw on the mayor's coffers for the payment of tuition at the university, a writ granting Kvothe the right to travel, play, and perform wherever he wills within the mayor's lands, and lastly, the mayor's thanks.
Also, it should be noted that just this morning, he did actually receive a letter, an official thing from the people in Levenshire saying, by the way, person both killed a whole bunch of your citizens and rescued our girls. Just letting you know. And so now there's at least a paper trail, and a paper trail makes it more tricky for Alvaron to punish Kvothe for his actions. There's the girls are fine. He did good thing, and I maintain he did not.
I think also this comes back to Alvaron's idea of the Amir, who do terrible things in the name of the greater good.
The greater good.
And so I think this is the sort of thing that Alvaron would say is ultimately for the best. It was a wrong thing done for the right reasons, but it was necessary. And that's the sort of thing that he would appreciate. Remember, he wants to be able to wield power in the name of the greater good.
The greater good.
Regardless of whether that comports to sense of morality or honor or goodness.
I will say, though, that I'm coming this from a sense of morality of today, my politics, my thoughts around executions, my thoughts around like capital punishment type things. I don't believe in the death penalty, especially don't believe in wholesale murder of criminals without a trial.
Yeah, it's extrajudicial. It is also vigilante justice at best. But anyway, it is not surprising that Alvaron would be okay with it. It is kind of interesting here with that player's note, though. It's not a note of patronage. While it gives Kvothe the right to go and play wherever he wants within the mayor's realm, and it gives him the right to use the mayor's name and everything as someone who's officially sanctioned. It also doesn't say that he gets to wear the mayor's colors or anything like that.
It is specifically a very loud remove that Kvothe is not working for the mayor in any official capacity.
Kvothe notes that this is a weird compromise document. I note that that's not actually that uncommon in international diplomacy, where you have multiple parties that have to undertake a lot of complex intellectual gymnastics to keep the peace, while simultaneously holding true to certain mutually exclusive, non-negotiable core principles. I'm not really going to get into international diplomacy because that's not really my core area of expertise, but you see it all the time, and it's Alvaron trying to find some way that he can give Kvothe something of value, while also knowing that if he is seen to do so by Maelluin, publicly especially, it will go badly for both of them, and she'll make their lives a living hell.
This is taking the adage that makes my skin crawl of happy wife, happy life, and just kind of turning it up to 11. This also shows that in this instance, in this part of Alvaron's life, he does not have power.
I think also it's worth noting here that because their marriage is as much political as it is romantic, though there does seem to be a romantic element to it, the political side makes it that much more fraught. Like, if two normal people have, quote, irreconcilable differences, yes, they can get a divorce, they can separate. And while it only impacts their immediate families and their own individual lives, it's limited impact. Whereas in this case, because Maelluin comes from this wealthy and powerful family, and let's be real, Alvaron is married to her as much for that reason as anything else. That's the only reason that she was ever in contention to be married to him in the first place. If they were to separate, not only could it potentially represent war between their people, it could destabilize the lives of millions of people.
I'm not sure that I would go to millions because I don't know what the population of the Four Corners really is. But I would say, upwards of tens to hundreds of thousands of people, probably, yeah.
There would probably also be ripple effects, not just within Ventus, but also in the surrounding nations as well. So Alvaron has some very strong incentives to keep the peace at home.
Especially within a few months of marriage.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Maelluin,
let's talk about her letter.
She also sends a letter.
We say letter, but I think what we mean is screed.
Yes. There's also a rather biting description from Brayden later.
So a second messenger arrives with a silver tray with another letter with the lackless seal on top and a wooden ring with Maelluin's name burned crudely on the side that everyone is very pointedly not looking at.
No. The guards are pointedly not looking at them. The messenger is looking at it in horror.
Yeah. So Kvothe takes a quick look at it and sends for Brayden.
Because he's like, I don't know what this means. All of the esoteric, random, dumb crap that's related to the ritualistic behaviors of the royals and the upper crust of Severin is just incomprehensible
bullshit. It's like trading trinkets at the Ren Fair.
But at least that people explain why. They're like, hey, it's fun. You can just maybe trade for cute little buttons and things. Here, have some rocks. But like that's different, I'd say, than like, well, the meaning of this used to be this. But then people started getting offended. And then we changed it to be like, well, but you can't give this to somebody and then give something else that is of lesser value to somebody of the same station. That would be rude.
So you know what this reminds me of?
Yeah.
It reminds me of the classroom Valentine's Day exchanges that used to happen when we were kids in elementary school.
There's ones that are written out to your friends who you really like. There's ones that you write out to your crush who you hope reciprocates. And then there's the ones for all the people that you kind of don't give a crap about.
The ones that they're there.
And then the ones that are for your bully, because you have to.
I generally just wrote to so-and-so from me. I never wrote notes.
Did you ever pick the better ones, though, for your friends?
Oh, yeah. I always use Ninja Turtle ones, and so my friends, I made sure that they always got their favorite turtles, because duh. And then people I didn't like ended up getting foot soldiers or Krang, who was like the worst villain.
I wonder how relatable that is outside of the US.
I also wonder how relatable that is to people who did not grow up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I also wonder how relatable that is now and if they still make you do that in school.
I don't know. If we've got any parents who are of elementary school age kids who are listening, let us know.
That would be interesting to know if they still make you guys buy a package of just shoddily cut and printed "Have a Happy Valentine" from like Bluey or whatever's popular now.
I don't know. Pokemon, maybe?
Digimon. Maybe that's still too.
Also, like, kids still watch Pokemon.
Yeah, no, I meant Digimon. I might be wrong because like that might still be too old. I don't know what's current.
We're old.
We are old. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't mind getting a little Valentine that had like dungeon meshy stuff on it, or Owl House, or some of the other. Like, if it's queer coded, I'd really love it.
Yeah.
That also is like, do they have many of the queer coded things? I mean, okay, you gotta understand, we are also people that purposefully choose the fun band-aids, which is also known as the children's band-aids, because they have fun things like Disney stuff on them, and they're not plain and brown and ugh.
So anyway.
Back to our story. Braden shows up.
So he notes that the two guards outside Kvoth's room are the mayor's own personal guards, and at first he assumes this is because Kvoth is really rising in rank.
No, he's joking.
When he sees the wooden ring, though, Braden quickly realizes those aren't there to keep people away from Kvoth, but rather to keep Kvoth away from other people.
Yeah, no, I think he realizes pretty quickly, like, that was a joke. That was definitely a joke at the beginning. That wasn't, oh, you must be super important. Oh, no, you're not. That was more like, wow, you
Forked up
something big, didn't you?
I don't think so, because when he actually reads the letter and sees the ring, his impression changes from, oh, I'm making a joke about how important you are now, to, oh no, this is actually really bad. So Kvoth asks Braden for how to interpret Maelwyn's letter. And it's kind of funny because while we got the exact text of Alvaron's letter, like in full, we only get one single solitary word of Maelwyn's. Excrescence.
Now, to be fair, the entirety of Alvaron's letter is 2 paragraphs. According to this little section, Maelwyn's letter is at least 2 pages long, and Braden makes a comment that she might as well have written this in blood, though she'd probably have had to exsanguinate herself to fill the 2nd page.
Yeah. Blood, not known for being a great writing ink.
No, I mean, it does coagulate. This section does a great job of painting how much, if Maelwyn could flay someone with a letter, she would have flayed Kvoth. Because, so we've got Braden's cheer evaporating. We have Braden's face going slightly gray. We have the descriptor of charming for the letter, which means everything but charming. But the fact of the matter is that Kvoth trusts Braden to read these things. In fact, he really wants Braden, who, again, I will remind you that the fandom is pretty damn sure that that is probably Cinder, to read this thing that is excoriating Kvoth. And Kvoth is just like, what does this all mean? Yeah, again, excrescence.
I'll also say that while this letter was probably very satisfying for Maelwyn to write, and it probably made her feel a lot better, I'm just going to say, readers, if you ever feel the need to write this sort of letter to someone, don't send it. You are not going to come out looking better because of it.
Accurate.
This is the sort of letter that reflects more on the sender than the receiver.
Yeah.
It's understandable to have these feelings. Everybody's got feelings. It's understandable to want to put them down in writing. Again, I get it. But maybe don't send it.
Yeah, there are definitely instances of emails that one shouldn't press send on and probably should delete the draft after writing.
Yeah, this is why diaries are private.
Mm-hmm. And why you should burn them before the cops come. Anyway, Kvothe also asks Braden about the wooden ring, and Braden nearly craps himself because he's like, to Malowin, you are less than human. That is what this means. Did people see this? Yes. Why are you putting it on?
Yeah, you don't wear that. You don't know where it's been.
Braden acts as though, what is the most apt, like, if you touch it, it will just burn and spread?
He reacts like it's radioactive.
Yes, he does.
And socially, yeah, Kvothe is kind of radioactive right now, at least as far as the people of the court are concerned.
It doesn't take very long for people to start writing letters saying, "Can I please have my rings back?"
Yeah, and what's also interesting here is the whole idea behind the symbolism of the wooden ring, how it's something that's evolved over time. And it made me think of like how language evolves. Let's take a simple word like silly. Historically, when the word silly was first in use, it originally meant pious and close to God. So it was something that was used to describe someone who was pure and virtuous and good. And then that meaning shifted to become virtuous and naive.
Innocent.
Innocent, yeah.
But innocent in that connotation.
Sheltered.
Yeah. Homeschooled.
Yeah. And then from there, it came to mean simple. And then from there, stupid. And now that's where we're at with today's meaning of it.
Although it's different, it's not stupid.
It's frivolous.
Right. So that's a different meaning than stupid. It does apply to people who make silly choices, which is a nice way of saying that you don't agree with their choices. And stupid is a mean way to say that.
And in this case, this feels very high school.
This whole thing.
Yeah, high school statuses. So yeah, originally this was what was sent to servants, what the nobility would send to servants. But then because there was a hierarchy among servants, you didn't want to send wood to one and iron to another and then make the one angry at you. And because I think there is a clever bit of knowledge here that it doesn't do to piss off the lower classes because they're ultimately the ones who actually hold power.
They outnumber you.
And all of the power that the nobility has comes in their ability to convince people with less standing than them to give them services of one kind or another, whether that is force of arms, material wealth, just household chores, you name it. And, you know, even just the kid who brings you your dinner at night, if he holds a grudge, he can make your life miserable in all sorts of invisible ways. That's why you never piss off the wait staff at a restaurant.
Why you shouldn't. There are some people that do it regardless.
Yeah, just don't. Like, even not just because you want to be a good person, and you do want to be a good person, I assume, if you're listening to this. Not just because it's the right thing to do to treat them kindly, but also they're touching your food, they're handling your food, and if you don't treat them with respect, well, ideally they won't retaliate. They'll have a reason to. And there's nothing to be gained by giving people a reason to want to retaliate against you.
One more thing about these rings that I do want to point out. Braden says that they would probably have fallen out of memory entirely if they weren't used as a plot device in a handful of plays. This just shows how things like plays and stories can keep traditions alive.
It's also little bits of anachronism almost. I think visually, like things like icons that you see on the desktop of your computer or on your phone, right? So the telephone icon that you see on most smartphones doesn't look like any phone that most people have in their homes these days.
Some adults have never actually seen the type of phone that has a receiver that looks like the phone icon.
Yeah, or they've never used a rotary telephone before.
People that are adults and in the working world have never seen a floppy disk in real life.
Right. To the point where if you show them an actual live floppy diskette, they look at that and think that, why do you have a 3D printed save icon?
Why is that the save icon? I think a lot of people do know why, but they're relics.
Yeah.
And so that's the same thing with the wooden rings. They're relics. And again, Brayden's horrified. It's just like, this is not the sort of thing you wear. Stop it. Stop it. Seriously, stop it. But at this point, we've got Kvothe looking through his rings to give people he respects their rings back. So he gives Brayden his ring back, and then after Brayden leaves, he chooses to go to see Stapes. Though before they're parting, Brayden does mention, if you're ever back in these parts, please don't hesitate to call on me. And reiterates one more time, you should stop wearing that ring.
At this point, I think Kvothe is wearing it as much as it's an act of reclamation for him, I think. Because he's spent so long trying to hide his Edema Rue heritage, now that it's out, I think he feels a little free.
This is a visual symbolism of him not giving one
Sure.
about what Maelun thinks of him.
So I kind of get it. It's like the way people in marginalized communities oftentimes will use the slurs directed at them in an act of reclamation in a way that other people shouldn't use.
There are arguments about whether or not queer folk should use the word queer because it was used as a slur by cishet people for a long time. And I see both sides. I use it because it is easier than trying to explain to someone that I am agender, asexual, panromantic, all of these things. And that's the tiny list, and I'm not going into all of the nuance and detail, but it is so much easier to just tell people I'm queer.
And that reclamation can be a thing that helps people to feel a little bit better about themselves.
Also, it forms a community a lot of times. It helps solidify or comfort a community. Not everybody in the community, not everybody in a given community has the same thoughts and the same wants and choices that they would make. We're not all monoliths.
My general stance on that is it is not for me to dictate how that community as a whole feels about it and how individual members within that community feel about it. That is for them to discuss amongst themselves. I will respect it and not use slurs.
I do like the part where Kvothe leaves his room, takes a look at his guards, those guarding him, and says, I'm going to go visit Stapes. You guys want to come with me? Come on.
The guards are kind of along for the ride.
Yes. They're like, this one's a smart
Ash.
Fine. Stapes welcomes him in. They talk. Kvothe notes how many golden rings Stapes has, with the exception of Alvaron, who has given him an iron one, but Stapes wears that one. And Stapes also says, you really shouldn't wear that thing.
And Stapes is horrified on Kvothe's behalf here. Like, he knows that Maelun has been upset, and he didn't honestly think that she'd go this far. Because what she's really done is marked Kvothe as not just someone she doesn't like, but as someone who is persona non grata in the household at large, and is showing basically anyone who shows Kvothe any ounce of friendship that she will then hold that against them. And that's a really toxic impulse.
Kvothe says, I'm not ashamed of what I am, and if this ring is that of an Edema Rue, I will wear it. And Stapes is just like, it's more complicated than that. And Kvothe's like, oh yeah, I know.
So, Kvothe gives back Stapes' rings as well.
So Kvothe first gives Stapes Alvaron's ring back, and he tucks it away in a pocket.
And then he gives Stapes' back. And while Stapes takes back the silver ring, he explicitly says, no, you keep the bone ring. The bone ring is not just a plaything in this sort of nobility game, this game of status and gossip and rumor and who likes who or cliques or whatever. This is a mark of debt between two equals. Stapes is basically saying, no, you have been a loyal friend to me and you have done me a great service. And regardless of whatever anyone else may say, this does not change. Keep the ring. And I think this is an important thing. This is, again, Stapes recognizing that whatever Kvothe's bloodline, whatever Kvothe's history or anything like that, he has done Stapes a true kindness and a true service and been a good friend to him.
Not gonna lie, that sentence made me tear up just a little bit.
Yeah, same here.
The rest of the chapter is a lot lighter. Kvothe goes home, has supper in his rooms. Wonder what he did with the rest of his day, because seriously, he woke up and then now it's supper time. But the guards were still waiting patiently as I read the mayor's letter for the 5th time. I was hoping I would find something more in the letter. I did not. It's 2 paragraphs, Kvothe. And then he does his ledger tally of how much money he has, because of course, because it's Kvothe.
And given that Kvothe has spent a lot of his life having to mind his finances, because it's been oftentimes the difference between having a meal to eat and having to rummage around in scraps or going hungry, it's understandable that he thinks on it that way.
So he gathers up his own stuff, and he gathers up some gifted things so that he could sell them. Belted on Sisura, works his shade into a long cape, and escapes out the window.
Yeah, Kvothe is nothing if not proud.
He locks the door, snuffs the lamps, climbs out the window into the garden, and uses a piece of bent wire to lock the window back. And he goes, petty mischief? Perhaps. But I'll be damned if I am escorted from the estate with the mayor's guards. And he's excited about the prospect, even if he doesn't get to see it, of them trying to puzzle out how the room is empty. And so he goes to Severin Low. He sells the letters that he's gotten from all of the court gossip mongers to an unsavory fellow, bargains out a stipend for each letter sold or each book sold, and an advance. He keeps the advance and burns the contract afterward because he feels gross, but he still feels petty enough to have done all of that. Like, they're not going to figure out who did it. Anyway, he contracts a ship to go to Jinpui, and he also leaves all of, like, he goes to a brothel, treats all the girls very nicely, buys everyone drinks, leaves all of the rings at the brothel.
Well, that might make for some potentially awkward conversations once those rings are seen around town.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound like the enemy of fun that I sometimes wind up like. I don't want to be a scold all the time. This is just wish fulfillment, Kvothe. He's like, okay, y'all are just, you deserve this. And I'm like, I don't know that they actually do deserve that just for being fops, but...
At the same time, Kvothe has seen that pretty much all of them, with a few exceptions, have treated him like crap.
Oh yeah, they only treat him well if they think they can get something from him.
And he also knows that it's not like they will ever change their opinion of him post his casting out by Maelowin. His stock is never going to improve in their eyes. So, okay, may as well. That bridge is burned.
Very much burned. Very, very, very much burned. There's also a little sentence that makes me kind of want to, like, gag a little bit. I was hoping I might run into Dinah, but of course I knew that she was gone. A city feels different when Dinah is somewhere inside it. Ugh. Phrasing. Dude. Ick. Severin felt as hollow as an empty egg. Okay, that's... The chapter ends with Kvothe going to a public garden where he can look over the entirety of the city, say goodbye, and then he realizes he's not alone. There is an older man leaned against a tree, and it seems like he's probably a dock worker.
I love this exchange here. They say a nobleman can piss on half a Severin from up here. And then Kvothe replies, those are the lazy ones. The ones I've met can piss a lot farther than that.
Different meaning of the word piss. Because essentially, like, the rich do piss down on the poor. They can make the poorer people's lives so much worse on a whim. And there's no empathy. There's no care.
There's not even an acknowledgement that it happens.
Right. One thing of note before we close the chapter. Kvothe considered chucking the ring off the cliff. But now that someone was watching, I couldn't help but feel that the gesture was somewhat childish. Kvothe, you're still a kid. Anyway, but he tucks it away. He keeps it. I think Pat doesn't write things by accident.
I have a feeling this is going to come back in some fashion. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about our Phronimos. So we didn't have a whole lot of options here.
No.
I mean, it's a fairly self-contained chapter.
Yeah.
But we did have Stapes, who I thought did a really good job this time. So he recognizes that while Kvothe may not be formally favored in court, his character is such that Stapes will always value Kvothe as a true friend and confidant. And this is why he insists that Kvothe keep the bone ring. It's a marker of debt between two equals that aren't bound by class or social standing. This is going to hold true whether Kvothe is the king or a beggar. The fact is, Stapes will always recognize him as someone of value and someone who has been good to him specifically. And there's also this recognition that while sometimes you have no choice but to play the game of status, there are things of true import that sit outside of these games. Anyone who's ever had to work in an office recognizes that, yes, office politics are a thing. Anytime you have a group of more than 3 or 4 people working on a project, certain elements will arrive with that can become political pretty quickly. And the more people involved, the more complex it gets. And especially when there's a very hierarchical thing going on there, as there are at many companies, and as there are especially in an aristocracy. As much as you can frown on and dismiss these things as frivolous, you still kind of have to play the game, at least to a certain degree. But you also don't have to let that game change the way you think about people. I think in this case, Stapes recognizes that it is true with that ring, with that wooden ring, Maelwyn has indicated that she hates Kvothe in a way that is over and beyond mere dislike, and that his presence in court is something that she will not countenance, and nobody really has a whole lot of choice here in how they can handle that part of things. But, and I think this is the important part, Maelwyn's opinion of Kvothe does not have to dictate how Stapes feels about Kvothe. Stapes is not obligated to share Maelwyn's estimation of Kvothe. I think Stapes probably has a better measure of him, just in general, both as someone who has been useful to the court and also just as a human being. He's seen that Kvothe has acted in the best interests of not only Alvaron and Stapes personally, but also of the whole country. And he also sees that Kvothe generally is trying to do the right thing, not always succeeding. I mean, there's a reason why Kvothe is never our Phronimos.
Quote, never our Phronimos.
But Kvothe is someone who does believe in doing the right thing and tries his best to do so and tries to figure out what that is. I mean, it's someone who does care about that sort of thing. And I generally think that when we think about who is a quote good person, it has a lot less to do with how often they do the right thing, but how consistently their aim is to do the right thing. We're all flawed. We can all be petty. We can all be selfish. We can all be harmful. We can all be greedy. We can all be any number of things. But a good person is someone who will recognize when they have fallen short of their ideals and try to do better and try to figure out what the best thing to do is now that they've made the mistake. And Kvothe, I think, generally does try to do his best in any of these situations. Doesn't always succeed, but I think he does try. And that's part of what makes him an interesting protagonist. Not that he's always successful at doing the right thing or that he's always picked the right course of action, but that he does care about what that is. And that's what I think separates him from a lot of really amoral anti-heroes. He is an anti-hero, but not one who is for lack of trying. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Good thoughts.
So you have Thing of the Week. What'd you pick?
So I've kind of been going a little back and forth trying to figure out what thing I want to recommend right now. But I think what I'm going to recommend, and I'm pretty sure I've recommended the game before, and if I haven't, you really ought to play it. But I'm going to say the soundtrack for What Remains of Edith Finch, which I undoubtedly will be playing in the background while I edit this. The game itself has a lovely, creepy vibe. It's a perfect autumn game, I think. It's in that vein of walking simulators, and I don't use that term derogatorily because I love walking simulators. I love things where you have to go and discover the story bit by bit by bit by bit. And What Remains of Edith Finch, it just grabs you. And if you liked Gone Home, it just brings that even further. And Anna Purna does wonderful little games, less than 10 hours worth of content generally. And I have yet to see one that they have published that I don't at least have fondness for. One of my other favorite ones is The Unfinished Swan, and oh my goodness, do I wish that they would release that on vinyl as a soundtrack. But there's a little musical Easter egg in What Remains of Edith Finch that ties it to The Unfinished Swan. And I just love that kind of thing. Like, that's the stuff that tickles my brain so much, because you're just like, wait, there's a connection here. That's really neat. And then you go and like down the rabbit hole of theories and all these other things, and you find out, yes, it was intentional. And I just loved it. I also recently got, at the same time, because I Am 8-Bit has the soundtracks, or at least had the soundtracks available on vinyl. And mind you, the vinyl for What Remains of Edith Finch, like the last time it was printed was like 7 years ago. And they finally did a reprint of it. And I'm so glad that I got it. I've been waiting for it for a long time. But also, I picked up the soundtrack for Florence, which is lovely and bright, and I need to play that game. I had never heard of it before seeing that it was available. And now I want to learn it, and I want to play it, and I want to see what this lovely little game is. If you're looking for something a little bit weirder, Kentucky Route Zero, totally again, worth your time. And I know that there are people that have a lot of affinity for things like Donut Country, which I personally haven't played either, but I picked up the soundtrack for a friend of mine. And I think beyond just the soundtracks, which are just lovely, I would say like looking into Anna Purna's game catalog, definitely recommend it.
I would especially recommend doing so now, given that all of their staff have officially quit.
That's true. Also Stray is another one. I like the people, I don't like the company. How's that?
Yeah, that's fair.
I like the people who made the things, and I want to support them. And I did buy these before that all happened. That's a different can of worms.
So this is specifically the game publishing, not the game studios.
Right.
But all of the staff in the Anna Purna game publishing arm got into a dispute with the media company that was trying to buy them out, and they didn't like the terms of the contracts they were being offered, or the way that the new purchaser was looking to exercise editorial control.
Got it. Okay, so it really doesn't come down to like Anna Purna games specifically. It has to come down to the people who are trying to buy them.
Correct.
Got it. I wasn't sure. I knew it had something to do with like worker rights and contracts and such.
That's related, but yeah, it's primarily the new company that was trying to take over.
It's working out contracts and such with the new company.
Yeah.
Okay. Still, definitely recommend all of the things that they have previously put out there in the world, because it's lovely stuff.
I think that's a great recommendation. So with that, I'm going to talk about our 7 words. So I had words from the book. I found take this to Braden and don't dawdle. Then I have keep up the good work, my boys. And then I think it's more complicated than that. I have wooden rings aren't used at all anymore. I have they would crush you with their bickering. I'm not ashamed of what I am. I have one that you found that I thought was pretty fun. And laughter is good for the digestion. And then this is the one that I picked, though. It is a debt between 2 men.
I think that's perfectly fair to have picked that, because I think it's kind of loving and it has its own seriousness and gravitas. And I think it alludes to the idea that Kvothe isn't done with Stapes in this story.
I think that's also a ring that's going to come back. Rings are cyclical.
Rings are infinite.
So you have 7 words from life. What did you pick?
I have to get them off my phone real quick to make sure I got them right. There's no need to earn your joy.
Oh, that's a good one.
So more recently, I have started reading things on Reddit and participating in things like that. I do occasionally pop up on the King Killer subreddit. I don't particularly like the King Killer subreddit, mostly because it's either repetitive at this point because of time, or there's just a lot of people that defend Kvoth's worst actions and then get kind of upset with people that poke holes in it. But that's not where the story goes. The story goes, I'm also on a lot of guitar subreddits.
Including r/guitar and r/guitars, two different things.
Absolutely. I'm also on like the bass subreddit and the ukulele subreddit and a bunch of things for the instruments I like to play. Recently got a PRS guitar, so I joined the PRS subreddit, and someone was like, okay, so I just bought the Silver Sky, which is the John Mayer signature guitar, but I'm not sure if I should cancel the order or return it or whatnot. And somebody else already asked the question that I always ask in these situations. Can you afford it? Do you have room for it? Do you want it? And the guy was like, yeah, also I really like John Mayer. And I'm like, okay. And so my response to it was, after having read through some of his other bits where he was like, I just don't know that I'm a good enough player and I haven't been playing long enough to deserve to get another guitar or a nice guitar. There's a lot of people. There are so many people that are like, I don't know this well enough, so I should just get the least expensive tool I possibly can for this job, right? Like, a lot of people are like, I don't play very well, so why would I be worthy of buying $1,000 guitar or what have you, like bass or whatever? And to a point, I understand, like, if you're not sure you're going to stick with it, sure. But I have a counterpoint to that as well, which is cheap guitars play like cheap guitars. They can sometimes hurt your hand. And I am too old for that.
Shirt.
I understand that if you have a budget, you have a budget. And that is fine. Stay within your budget and find the best gear you can with your budget. I also do not suggest anyone go into debt over material objects. That's enough said. I don't suggest financing things. If you can afford it, you can afford it. But if you have to finance it, my own opinion, you don't really have the ability, you can't afford it. Make payments to yourself and buy it later. But the guy is just like, yeah, I can afford it and I'm good. And I'm like, okay, well then you don't have to earn something that brings you joy. You don't have to earn it by being better at guitar. Hell, I bought a better guitar and it inspired me to continue playing. And you can even ask my teacher. I went from like almost not practicing between lessons sometimes to being like, ooh, pretty guitar. Ooh, comfortable guitar. I'm going to sit and watch TTRPGs on my computer while playing my guitar. And I've gotten a lot better over the last 6 months since I got this guitar. You don't have to earn it. If something brings you joy, you don't have to earn the ability to get it for yourself if you can afford it and have space for it.
Yeah, I think you don't have to prove that you're worthy of it.
Right. And I also mentioned, because he otherwise was like, yeah, my partner's not happy about this particular hobby. And I'm like, totally understand that. But the thing about it is just make sure that your hobbies are equally taken care of. Like, equity is great. Like, make sure that if you're choosing to spend money and spend time on your hobbies, that you are not depriving the other person of it, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. You and I have the same love of music and vinyl. I have a wider variety of things that I like because I want to play bass and I want to play ukulele and I want to play guitar and I want to play piano and I want to play my kalimba and my tank drum and my cajon and the ocarinas and all of the stuff that's in the room. You like guitars.
Yeah.
And that's good and lovely and wonderful. But one of us doesn't get to have things at the expense of the other.
Yeah. Let's look at it this way, though. Like, let's say you have your hobby playing guitars. Let's say that I didn't share the guitar hobby. Let's say instead I did Warhammer minis or whatever.
Right. You could still look at that and go, let's equitably share time so that, like, I can go and play guitar when I want to, and you can go paint minis if you want to.
Yeah. And, again, we have our own separate budgets for stuff that we spend on us versus individually. And if we're spending our individual money on it, and we've made space for it in our lives, then that's perfectly fair.
And again, we do our finances a specific way, but other people do them a different way. I would just say in those situations, don't deprive another person of their time or ability to have things that bring them joy just for your own sake. But at the same time, that doesn't mean deprive yourself, so like fully deprive yourself, right? Like find a way that there's a balance. But if something brings you joy, find a way to make that work. And also care about the other people in your life that also could use some of that joy. And I realize that money does not just infinitely stretch to be able to get everything for everybody all the time at once. Not what I'm saying. There are some caveats to the buy a new guitar thing. If you can afford it and have room for it, then I don't see a reason to say no to a thing that brings you joy. If everything is tighter, find a way to either pay yourself until you can actually afford it, or find a way to make something else that is also fulfilling that joy button happen for yourself, but also encourage that in another person with you. You might have to split your budget. You might have to like be a little bit like, oh, dang it, now I don't have as much to spend on myself. But like things don't have to be equal in monetary value to be equal in personal value. Let's say your hobby was Warhammer minis. We're going to go back to Warhammer minis. Warhammer minis are expensive, yo.
That's exactly my point.
But if your hobby was that, and my hobby was, I'll just pick a different one of my hobbies, painting, like canvases or other artwork stuff. Your Warhammer army could cost a amount. And as long as it is equitable, my art supplies don't have to have an equal or greater monetary value to bring an equal amount of joy to each individual. So it doesn't have to be like money for money, dollar for dollar the same. But what I'm saying is don't forget that the people in your lives also deserve to have you enthusiastically cheerleading for their joy.
Absolutely. No need to add shame to the mix.
Right. For anyone.
Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me.
And thanks for listening to Tales from the Waystone. Join us next time on Tales from the Waystone as we discuss chapters 141 through 143 of The Wise Man's Sphere through the lens of homecomings.
We would like to thank our friend Shawnee Jang for our theme music.
And many thanks to Patrick Rothfuss for creating a world that we've enjoyed exploring.
Audio production, editing, and social media coordination courtesy of me, Phoenix McCullough.
And writing and project management courtesy of me, Will McCullough.
If you would like to help support us, and have the means to do so, and would like to hear us talking about things like I Hate Fairyland, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page, patreon.com/waystonepod.
Also, come hang out on our Discord server.
That's what I was about to say. Anyway, with that, here's to one more day above the roses.
To one more day above the roses. Ding!
That you don't give a shirt?
Shit.
No.
Don't give a shirt?
About spoilers. Why was I ever going to replace the word shirt with the word shit?
I don't know, but all I thought was, oh yeah, we have to do the opposite.